actually, it makes me want to piggyback on, because one of the questions is monetization against fan engagement, right? Because it's easy for us to be here and judging like, oh, it needs to be a long-term strategy, spend some money without being sure of the ROI, nor whether you're going to be in this organizations 3 years from now or not. Yeah. But I remember you, Peter, we were having the conversations when you were back at Meta saying, hey, engagement works, social works. We have proof points that those that bringing that interactivity actually creates retention. Afterwards, who is better than Meta to monetize their audience? Close to no one. What is the first advice that ties to what Tom was asking in terms of how did you monetize this additional CPM value that you were creating?
Yeah, I think there were definitely challenges at Meta, and there remain challenges in terms of monetization. And I think it's fascinating to see some of the YouTube examples with people like Kaze TV, because Meta fundamentally isn't selling against brands, it's selling against audience. So, for example, when we were showing the Champions League in South America, in theory, we couldn't say to Heineken, yeah, do what you want to do, which is take a load of ad spots against the Champions League. We could say monetize against 18 to 30-year-olds in a certain market who are football fans, and have very targeted advertising, but not really make that connection with a sports brand. I think fascinating to see what YouTube are now increasingly allowing, which is that idea of which Kaze TV in Brazil do brilliantly around the Olympics and FIFA properties, for example, where you can find a way of sponsoring that content and having a brand association that is a more traditional sports sponsorship and so that fits the requirements of a sponsor better. So I think, yes, there's definitely some monetization on Meta, and there's some small revenue shares there. There's revenue shares on YouTube, so you can find revenue lines out of these networks. But clearly, the long-term potential of understanding your audience and monetizing the audience is far better where you do control the fan data. You want to say, okay, I've got a fan who's come into a game from Brazil to watch a game in England. He is going to clearly, or she is going to clearly spend more at that game because it's such a one-off moment. I remember a conversation at Arsenal where they were talking about the Emirates Cup, sort of pre-season friendlies. And they were saying, these are the days when we monetize our fans more than anything else, because you're far more likely to have people who come once a season for those pre-season games, as opposed to the people who come in week out, week in and spend in the same way. So understanding who your audience is, what they're coming from, what their motivations are, is clearly a way of having a much more targeted growth of income.
Advertising is not the only way to monetize, right? Like, I think when you think about gamification and you start thinking about cohorts, I had heard recently an organization saying we don't have a need for a loyalty program because our season ticket member renewal rates are 97%. We don't need loyalty, or it's not we don't need loyalty. The need for loyalty is not as much for this team. And our point over there was it was more about gamification. What we were saying is maybe 10% of your fan base is season ticket members. That's probably on the higher end as well. The rest of the fans that are more casual fans, that are fans that are coming to your stadium a few times a year, not on a daily game basis. How do you monetize that fans better? How do you capture a greater share of wallet from those fans? Likewise, there are fans who never come to your stadium, but they are loyal fans. They just may not live in the vicinity. How do you capture a greater share of wallet? That's where strategies like games and gamification truly come into play, is get them to your D2C platforms daily, capture their data, learn more about who they are, and then over time, target them with specific packages. So there are many ways to monetize, and gamifications and games and engagement can really lead to that monetization strategy. That's another thing, is like, it's not just about advertising revenue anymore. It's not about media rights revenue anymore. There's many other ways to do this.
And I think, going back to one of your earlier questions about how do investors look at properties, they look for growth lines of income. And even if those lines are quite small for now, the idea that you're building growth lines of income that diversify your risk, you're not all about getting one media rights check. I think that's important as you build valuation.